Hey y'all, I hope you are having a wonderful, wonderful first week of June. It is amazing how quickly this year is passing. But fortunately, it is still just early summer, and the spring foraging is still really going well, especially where I live, where it's a little cooler than most places. And we'll talk about two different plants out of my spring foraging cookbook today. They're short entries, but really, the first one especially, very common, very easy to find, very easy to use. Great beginner plant for foraging. You know, if you haven't foraged before, I bet you can identify clover. Okay, especially red clover. We have wild red clover all over the mountains of North Carolina, and I mean it's thick and lush. And clover, all clovers, true clovers, are edible. The white clover was once planted more commonly than grass in yards, in lawns, and I really wish it still was. You see, grass is, most of your ornamental grasses are not native, of course, and they take a lot of work, you know, a lot of mowing, a lot of chemicals, and you end up with a lawn that looks like a golf course. If that's what you want, that's fine. Other than that, they're not very useful for anything. Clover, especially white clover, is what people used to plant for their lawns, only grows so tall. It never needs to be mowed. And all clovers are leguminous plants, meaning they take nitrogen from the air and fix it in the soil through a fungal relationship in the soil. Clovers never need to be fertilized. They really don't have, you don't have a lot of weeding issues with clovers. They will pretty much choke out most anything else around them, if that's what you want. They're very resistant to being walked on, or dogs peeing on your lawn or whatever. It's not going to be a problem with clovers like it can be with grasses. They're fairly disease resistant. They don't have a lot of the problems that grasses have, and they're very drought tolerant. Now, one of the nice things about clovers is when you cut them or walk on them, they release that nitrogen into the soil, so you're adding nutrition to the ground with every clover plant you allow to thrive in your yard. And if you want to cut up a spot of your lawn, turn it under, I mean, and take a spade or till it, or don't till it, put mulch on it, however you like to garden, you have natural fertilizer. And so it's really nice if you're going to use your yard to grow food or even ornamental flowers. Plant your beds and then put clovers between everything on all the walkways, and just enjoy having natural fertility. Clovers are great for pollinators. The bees love clover. Clover honey is one of the best honeys there are. Wild red clover is the one I usually eat. Yellow sweet clover is good. Hop clover, white clover. Several others can be used similarly. Spring leaves are mild and fresh tasting. This is a great plant if you have livestock as well. Your chickens, your goats, your horses, everything loves clover. They love to graze on clover. And people do too once you get used to it. The flowers are sweet and have a very pleasant aroma, very subtle. You may not even have noticed it before. I usually just grab a handful of flowers and toss them into salads. And the reason I use it kind of sparingly is because red clover, which is the most common here, has estrogen-like compounds, what we call phytoestrogens or plant estrogens. So I only use a little bit of it. If it didn't have, because I'm a guy. Now, if I was female and I wanted more estrogen, I'd probably eat red clover on a daily basis. I mean, spring through fall, as long as it's in flower, because it's really delicious. You can make syrups and wines with the flowers just like you do dandelion. But the leaves, I mean, this is just a natural salad herb. I mean, natural salad plant. And you can also be cooked. I mean, you can take the leaves and flowers and cook them. Sometimes a few red clover flowers, either raw or just briefly sauteed, I will put on, like maybe some baked trout or something like that if I want it to look fancy, if I'm entertaining a lady, for instance, Maybe a few other flowers, a few violets. I mean, it's, very nice way to perk up a plate, to add a little extra flavor and nutrition because they're very, very good for you. The natural sweetness of the flower really goes nice with a tart mustardy vinaigrette. So that's really how I like to do them in a salad. And you can also use clovers to balance out more pungent greens. If you got some really strong, well, some bitter dandelion or some strong wild mustard, you can definitely put clover in there to make it a little more palatable for folks. The only look-alike is wild indigo. The leaves can appear similar at certain stages of growth, but you're going to learn to identify wild indigo pretty quickly, and the flower is totally different. The mature plant looks nothing like clover. Um, One way to eat the clover blossoms is to batter and fry them, and that's really good, actually. Again, it's not something I do often because I don't like to have a lot of estrogens in my diet, but just put them dipped in pancake batter and then dropped in some oil. Sprinkle a little salt on top. If you like stuff like fried squash, and I really get into that kind of thing. Fried squash blossoms, daylily blossoms, all that's really good. Elderflower fritters, locust tree fritters. If you like, fried artichokes. I mean, really, if you like fried crispy vegetables, really delicious and pretty hard to turn that down. I think adults and children of all ages would flock to your table if you fry up some red clover blossoms, or like I said, other clovers too. Now, the other one is not one you're going to find in the wild a lot, but you may. It depends on where you live. It's an edible wild plant that was once very popular in Europe, and it's one that was brought to America to be used as food. It's called corn salad. It's actually, I believe it's in the valerian family. Sometimes it's called lamb's lettuce. If you go to heirloom seed catalogs, you'll find this, and a lot of people like to grow it in the garden. That's where you'll mainly find it. But if you live where there was an old English garden, and that, a few centuries ago, that person has passed away, and their descendants are no longer gardening that spot, and you may now live on the property, you may well find corn salad. Very pretty flower too. It's like I said, edible plant. Was once one of the main salad greens grown in, especially England and probably France. You're more cooler maritime climate European countries as opposed to like the hot Mediterranean end of the country continent. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't think I've ever really found it growing truly wild. Like I said, when I find it, it's probably gotten out of somebody's garden years and years and years ago. And it's nice because it's cold hardy, and this is one you can grow along with chickweed, so you can have some good salad greens through the winter and the early spring when very few other things are available. And it was, once one of the few plants people could use as a fresh vegetable as in the winter and early spring. So it was really highly valued. The leaves, although smaller, they are not very big. They're a lot like spinach, and so you can enjoy them either fresh or cooked. And it is better before it flowers. I like this one enough to grow in the garden, absolutely. Seeds can be hard to find. Check your heirloom seed companies like Baker Creek, Southern Seed Exchange. Well, they're different ones. You'll probably, maybe even Vessie's. If you look hard enough, you're going to find it. And it's often classified as a medicinal herb as well. So is the clover, by the way. These are both edible and medicinal. Like I said, corn salad, yeah, it is related to valerian. It's actually an edible valerian, but it doesn't have that kind of cat pee type scent that valerian has. Only the root has that smell, actually, but very strong. You can easily identify valerian proper, Valeriana officinalis. Uh, lamb's lettuce or corn salad does not have that scent whatsoever. I don't know if it has any sedative action, and the reason I don't know, one, I don't haven't found much documentation on that. Valerian is our go-to simple sedative herb. Unfortunately, valerian doesn't have much effect on me whatsoever. So, if I say I have an injury or something and I'm in a lot of pain and I just really need some sleep, or if I'm having insomnia, which does happen to me occasionally, enough valerian will definitely knock me out. Okay, it will give me really weird dreams, but enough valerian. But for me, that's like 10 times the dose you would give to an average person. I have a constitution like an elephant. Most people, just a little valerian is relaxing and will cause sleepiness. About I'll say 60-70% of people can take it just fine for sleep and relaxation. It's good for muscle spasms and such as that as well. It's antispasmodic, has some good pain relieving effects in that way for cramping and muscle pain. But for some, it actually has the opposite effect and it acts as a stimulant. Apparently, that's about 10% of the population. Another, I'm going to say 10 to 20%, it gives you strange dreams. And most people say nightmares. I fall into that category when I have to take it, and just for sleep, I have really intense, vivid dreams, usually disturbing dreams, but not necessarily nightmares. Now, some people it gives just truly terrifying nightmares. No one really knows why this is the case. Um, it could just be that deeper sleep kind of allows the brain to go places that it normally wouldn't. I don't know. But like my mom, for instance, can't take it at all. A good friend of mine out in Nevada, she can't really take it because it has the stimulant effect on her. So valerian's very, for most people, works just fine, but very individualistic. It really works with your own body chemistry, your own brain chemistry, and it's what we call an energetic herb. It's going to be different for different people, but really on the scale of those energetic herbs, this one works for most people. So corn salad is a variety of valerian that has medicinal use, but it's not well documented, and I can't really um, find out by experimentation, which is how I usually use herbs. I tell you how they affect me. But I would encourage you to grow it and try it in your garden and report back to me, any sedative effects it might have had or anything else. So there are two main things to remember about corn salad, or lamb's lettuce as it's sometimes called. One, the flavor is very mild. Like I said, it's like a mild spinach. Two, it needs to be washed well because it has a tendency to hold sand. I normally don't wash most wild vegetables. This is one you're going to have to wash. And the flavor, somewhere between spinach and chickweed, very mild tasting. Actually, to taste my taste, if I'm going to, well, I'd say it tastes more like alfalfa sprouts or even clover, even the clover we just talked about. It's like mild sweet. It's one that just about everybody's going to like, really. It's good in salads. It's good on a sandwich. You can toss it in a pan with a little olive oil and salt until it wilts, and it makes a great cooked vegetable, just like spinach. And great side dish for any kind of grilled meat, or toss some feta cheese on it. This is one you might want to try to make it some kind of spanakopita type thing. I mean, I love spanakopita. I grew up with a Greek family down the road that had a restaurant, and I just fell in love with it. And you could do that. I think I actually have a recipe for it in the book. Yeah, I do. But so I'll just give you like a really brief rundown. Um, Basically, it's just cooked spinach and a cream sauce, and that's a bechamel, just your flour and your butter, cooked together. Add some milk, simmer it until it's thick. You make a cream of spinach, essentially. Put in your spinach. In this case, you could use corn salad. I usually would add some feta cheese and a little chopped garlic. I think that's optional. I think any allium would be good in there. I like that. I might grab a few other herbs, whatever's coming in the herb garden, whatever smells good, tastes good to me. Usually maybe a grated nutmeg, I think, is traditional. And you basically just roll it up in puff pastry and bake it. And it's just delicious. I mean, it's so simple. And, it's so hard. It's so easy to cook. It's so hard to do it wrong. It's amazing, though. Like several times I've ordered them at restaurants and they're burned. I don't know. I mean, it's so hard to go wrong with something that simple. And so many people do it wrong or just I don't know, maybe they get lazy with it, but when it's done right, it's just delicious. Truly one of my favorite dishes. Of course, I like cream of spinach. I love quiche. I'm a spinach fan. I've been it was like actually my favorite green when I was a kid. They say you can't eat kids to eat get kids to eat spinach. You cannot get kids to eat spinach. Yeah, I did. I love spinach from a very early age. That was like literally my favorite vegetable when I was like 2, 3 years old. I mean, I just thought it was great. Now, I don't know if that's because I watched Popeye cartoons or because I just like the flavor and my mom encouraged me to eat it. But yeah, a huge fan of spanakopita. So yeah, anyway, try that out. I got a more detailed recipe in the book, Spring Foraging Cookbook. So we'll stop there on forage plants and we'll go to our medicinal herb of the week. And it's interesting. It's actually also an edible, and I'll have a separate entry on this in the Spring Foraging Cookbook. This has come from my medicinal weeds and grasses of the American South, and it's another one's going to be growing everywhere. I mean, I'm sure it's growing everywhere from Canada to Mexico and beyond. It is Perilla frutescens. Now, you may know this as Perilla. That's what it's usually called. It's considered a common weed. You may know it as beefsteak plant. I don't know how it got that name. It doesn't taste like steak or anything. But you may also know it by the Japanese name of Shiso. Now, in Japan, well, most of Asia actually, this is one of the most favorite of all edible plants. I mean, they grow it, they use it in salad soups. I've seen it in like spring rolls. I've seen it in all kinds of, especially Japanese dishes. I mean, it's a very pretty little plant. It has a deep dark purple, and that's usually going to be very nutritious. Those are antioxidant compounds. Whenever you see a purple vegetable, it's considered a weed in America, which I consider ridiculous because it gets out. It's hard to control. Your local extension agent's probably going to freak out if you tell him you're growing it in your garden because he's going to, oh, it's invasive, it's going to take over. Well, you know what? It's delicious, it's nutritious, and it's medicinal. Why do we really care if it takes over? I feel the same way about garlic mustard. I mean, they're trying their best to get rid of a plant called garlic mustard, which is absolutely one of my favorite wild edibles because it's neither a mustard nor garlic, but it tastes like mustard greens and has the flavor and aroma of garlic, and those are like my two favorite things. So I mean, I love it, and yeah, it'll spread and it can squeeze out native plants, but that's such a wrong way of looking at things. They talk about native or indigenous plants. Well, the question you have to ask is something we talk about in permaculture a lot. Is indigenous to win? I mean, okay, so it was growing here 200, 300 years ago when our ancestors got here. Does that mean it was growing here 2,000 years ago? Probably not. Does that mean it was growing here 2 million years ago? Almost absolutely not. When did it arrive and how did it arrive? Well, what we consider native plants here in America probably got here with the seeds being carried by birds, or if they're small enough, they can actually be carried by wind and clouds even. Seeds and such can float across water. When animals migrate, the seeds are often in their fur. That's one of the ways that, like burrs and such especially will spread, but many seeds do that. Other seeds are specifically designed to be eaten by birds and animals, and only after they're pooped out do they begin to sprout. So birds can carry seeds from continent to continent very, very easily, but so can many other animals. When The first, what we now call native peoples, even though there's no such thing, arrived. That's true. Okay, I mean, they're trying to shift to the word First Nations or First Nation people because they're not actually native. No one lived in North America or South America more than likely a million years ago, right? Um, at some point, probably more than 10,000 years ago, that's sort of somewhat new evidence. Only in the 1980s they found um, a medicine bundle in, I think it was somewhere around Mexico or South America. Anyway, it dated to more than 10,000, it's like 14,000 years old, all wrapped up and stored in a dry cave, so it was perfectly preserved. It blew everybody's mind because in this medicine bundle were plants and mushrooms, things used for medicine, herbal medicine, from all over the North and South American continent. From, I mean, things that only grow in Alaska to things that only grow in the tropics, things that only grow in the desert. I mean, and it showed that this entire side of the world was populated, not only populated, but widely spread from one tip of South America way up to, Alaska, and had sophisticated trade routes. Um, Before, like 10,000 years before they thought anyone ever set foot on the continent. So there's so much we still don't know about how old humanity is and the movements of people. More than likely, those people that lived here 10, 14,000 years ago, many of them were wiped out by a plague. Not a plague introduced by European settlers, but a natural plague. And then their survivors started over, and maybe more came in across the Bering Straits during the Ice Age. But it appears that more than likely Polynesian people came across the Pacific Ocean and settled parts of the South American, at least, continent long, long before we ever knew that human beings were here. Now, we know that Polynesians travel with certain plants so that when they would cross the ocean, they would have food plants to plant when they got to wherever they were going. So when we talk about what is native, we got to say, well, when did it get here? And truly, no human being, no plant, and no animal is truly native to pretty much anywhere. We don't know where the first people originated. Could have been Australia. Yeah, probably was, actually. We don't know where the first, I don't even know, pine tree grew. But now we have pine trees all over the world. So the whole concept of native plants, indigenous plants, and invasive weeds is actually pretty absurd. Okay? It really is. So when I see something like garlic mustard, I don't tell anybody. I don't go get the Roundup and spray it. I wait till there's no one around, and I grab as many big sacks, like big old trash bags as I can, and go gather it all. And if it's on somebody's property, I ask, of course, and sometimes somebody will even offer to pay you. But I mean, I can go gather just bushels and bushels of garlic mustard. Well, the same thing is true of Perilla. Perilla, this beautiful plant, I think it's actually in the mint family, that's useful medicinally and a really good, really, really good wild edible, considered a weed. So feel free to harvest it. Remember, don't harvest next to roads or ditches by fields that have been sprayed by chemicals or anything like that. But if you see it on someone's property, tell them, I notice you have a bunch of this weed. I actually like to eat it. Would you mind if I gather it? And they're probably going to say, sure. And if you wait to tell them how you use it, they may even offer to pay you. But anyway, to me, it's a very pretty plant. Like I said, it's a deep purple. Seems to be fairly shade tolerant, but it likes full sun too. And I'm always just really happy when I find some. But medicinal use of Shiso. This is from Plants of the Future. The leaves, stems, and seeds of Shiso are often used in Oriental medicine. It is a pungent, aromatic, warming herb that is antibacterial, antidote, antipyretic, antiseptic, antispasmodic, antitussive. We're getting into a bunch of technical words here. Antitussive means it can help with coughs. Okay, I think What else might you not have recognized? Maybe antipyretic? And antipyretic is just another one of those words that means help reduces fever. They also say diaphoretic, which means the same thing. Febrifuge means the same thing. Antispasmodic, I'm sure you got that. Aromatic, carminative means it's good for digestion. Emollient means softening. Probably in that case, we're talking more to the stool. But I don't know. Maybe it can be used as a poultice. We'll see. Expectorant means it gets mucus out of the lungs. Pectoral means it's good for chest issues. Stomatic and tonic. So, I mean, this is a great, valuable medicinal plant. The juice of the leaves is applied. Let's see. The leaves are used in the treatment of cold, chest stuffiness, vomiting, abdominal pain, etc. The juice of the leaves is applied to cuts and wounds. The seed is antihistomatic, means it helps with allergies. Antitussive, emollient, and expectorant. It is used in the treatment of asthma, colds, chills, nausea, abdominal pain, food poisoning, and allergic reactions, especially from seafood. Isn't that interesting? Also used for bronchitis and constipation. The stems are a traditional remedy in Chinese medicine for morning sickness. However, the herb should be avoided by pregnant women. Edible parts of Shiso: edible young leaves and seedlings, raw or cooked. They say the flavor is strange to the Western palate at first. That is actually true. This is a really interesting plant, and as they mentioned, it has sort of a spiciness to it that some people say is like cinnamon. Others say it's more like coriander or a bit like citrus. And yeah, it's just got this kind of interesting spicy flavor. That's why it's so popular, used in Japanese cooking especially. Seedlings are added to salads. Older leaves are used as a garnish or flavoring. Older leaves are also salted and used as a condiment. That's true. You can pickle this one. You can ferment it, and it's really popular as a condiment for tofu or a garnish for tempura. You'll love this once you get used to it. The leaves from purple cultivars are used to color preserved fruits. And yeah, there are other colors than purple. That's the one I recognize and probably the most common around here. The leaves can also be dried for later use. The leaves contain about 3% protein, 0.8% fat, believe it or not, and 4% carbohydrate, and 1% ash. The immature flower clusters are used as a garnish for soup and chilled tofu. I hate tofu, by the way. I am not advocating the eating of tofu. I think it's a horrible, awful. It's not good for you, and two, it's not good food, in my opinion. Now, I love soy sauce. I'm not totally against things made from soy. I actually like certain edible varieties of soybeans. Most soybeans are grown for industrial purposes. They're used to make paints and such. Most of the rest are used for animal feed. There are some, there's like a black soybean that's an heirloom variety that's quite tasty, but soy contains plant estrogens. It's another food I avoid. But I love soy sauce and miso and such as that. I'm just not a fan of tofu. If you are, more power to you. But I don't like it. Yeah, so we said immature flower clusters used as a garnish for soups and chilled tofu. Older flower clusters are fried and eaten. I haven't tried that. I need to try that. The seeds are preserved in salt or used as a spice in pickles, tempura, and miso. Yeah, very popular, like spice. They are one of the ingredients in shimchimi or seven spice. Okay, they're in seven spice. The seed can also be eaten cooked. Seeds from the purple leaf forms of the plant are preferred for culinary use. And I mean, that's the one I know. I definitely want to get some growing in my garden, and I'm going to go with the purple leaf variety. That's, like I said, I like that one. And really, actually, is very good as a fermented pickle. Well, they call it a pickle. Like if you go to an Asian grocery store, they'll have pickled mustard leaves and all kinds of good stuff. Really experiment with that. I think you'll find a lot of things you like. And the fermented beefsteak or shiso or perilla leaves are a completely different flavor because they've got that weird kind of spiciness to them, but they're very, very tasty. The seed contains about 21% protein. It's a high protein seed and 43% fat. So very good to incorporate in your diet. 11% carbohydrate, 4% ash. An edible oil is obtained from the seed. It is rich in linoleic acid. The plant yields an essential oil which is used as a food flavoring in candies and sauces. It's interesting. I can kind of see that. And the only other entry I've got on this one, believe it or not, it wasn't even in any of my Chinese medicine textbooks, and I've got 3 or 4 of those. So that was kind of surprising. I found much more about its culinary use in Asian cookbooks than I did in Asian medicine books. But the Peterson Field Guide to Medicinal Plants tells us the leaf tea used in traditional medicine for abdominal pain, diarrhea, vomiting, and coughs, to quiet a restless fetus and relieve morning sickness. Also helps relieve irritability during pregnancy, fevers, and colds. Considered to be diuretic, sedative, and spasmolytic. But then it gives the warning, just like Plants for Future did, warning: avoid during pregnancy. So, I always say be careful with any herbs if you're pregnant. If you know a midwife or an herbalist that specializes in women's health, maybe discuss with them how it can be used safely for morning sickness and irritability and all that. But the 2 sources I have that tell me about the medicinal use of Perilla both say avoid during pregnancy. So I'm going to say avoid during pregnancy. But do remember, we're usually discussing medicinal doses. When most herbs that have culinary use that are said to avoid during pregnancy, if you're just putting a little bit of oregano in your pasta sauce, you'll probably be okay. But I give the caveat to be very careful if you're pregnant, and I certainly don't recommend any herbs during pregnancy, even those generally considered safe. But there are many women's herbalists that are far more knowledgeable on the subject than I am, so I just defer to them. Go get a book by Rosemary Gladstar or Susan Weed or any of the women that really specialize in herbs for women, and or talk with a midwife that's expert in the use of herbs, and or do your own research. But I don't give advice on that. I will say that I really like Perilla. So don't let the bad press scare you off. And by the way, the same is true of the garlic mustard. It shouldn't be eaten in large amounts by pregnant women. That's probably another one you want to avoid because it has some vermifuge qualities. It can help rid the body of intestinal parasites and worms, and anything like that can cause a miscarriage and probably a lot of damage to the mother as well. So, but as far as I'm concerned, these are 2 plants that I certainly don't mind being invasive, and I'd like to have a whole lot more of them, honestly. I've often thought that, kudzu, for instance, it has wonderful medicinal properties as well, we'll get into before long, but it's very edible. The leaves are high in protein, they taste like spinach, the flowers can make jams, jellies, and wines that are really like Concord grape juice. I mean, that's what they look and smell and taste like. And it's a very useful plant. I've often thought that, I could live very well on some of these so-called invasive weeds that take over if I had maybe a few goats and some chickens to keep it from getting out of control. But we'll see. It's one of those things like, well, I might do well, but the next generation may have an issue here trying to not be overtaken by kudzu. But, is that a bad thing? Maybe not. If you teach the kids how to use it and they teach their kids how to use it, you've got food and medicine and livestock fodder for generations and generations. So I really, I'm of that mindset of don't try to eradicate weeds. Don't curse the weeds. Figure out what God intended them to be used for and use them. Why do you want to live on a golf course? I don't. All right, y'all. Have a good one, and I will talk to you next week.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.